Hello, hello, hello. Hello. Hello. Excuse me.
Check, check, mic check.
Hello. Hello, hello.
Check, check.
Hello. Hello.
Okay, ma'am. Okay, sir. Check, check. అన్న ఒక్కసారి చెక్ చేసుకో. చెక్ చెక్. ఓకేనా?
college, etc. So I never venture into that. I allow them to introduce themselves respectfully, and so let them do that about their institution first. And after that, I will start the panel discussion asking you. So in the order, I would like the BIRAC representative who is here to begin the introduction, and then Jugnu, and then Nitish in that order. Is that okay? So I will now invite him for his opening remarks.
You can do it from here itself, right? Okay. Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Murli, for kind initial introduction, of course, and the elaboration with respect to the requirement for today's panel discussion. So just to introduce myself, I am definitely was associated at that time as well. So it was 2012. This was started by Dr. M.K. Van. At that time, he was actually is no more, unfortunately. But he was the visionary, and he was the secretary of Department of Biotechnology, and started with one program, which is similar to the program in US, which is SBIR. It's a fund to create the entrepreneurship in the academia. Now that, basically we started with that and we expanded extensively. So we were just comparing, like when BIRAC started with respect to the startup, as he asked me to mention about the startup numbers, so around 50 startups. If you see the biotech startups in India, there are around 50 of them. But today we are more than 6,000 biotech startups are there. So that's the impact the BIRAC and the overall the Indian economy has created. Very recently, maybe I will others give others to chance to introduce themselves, but and I will come back again. But just to tell you that for the COVID, the pandemic situation that we had in beginning of 2020, and Government of India has taken immediate measure of that one. And we have implemented a program called Mission COVID Suraksha. It's a program where the government infused around 900 crore, and it was implemented through BIRAC to create not only the vaccines. So the vaccines that has been into the market is not only the vaccine, the facilitate for manufacturing those vaccines. So you need to have the clinical trial sites that need to be there where the vaccines can be immediately taken into the trial. You need to have the demography, you need to have the testing labs, you need to have the animal facilities. There is a whole plethora of ecosystem that has been created using this, and today we are able to prevent that huge pandemic, although it has created a huge loss to the country as well, but whatever the loss could have gone, it has not gone to that stage because we are very lucky. To some of the people, I think they're also sitting here, Bharat Biotech, Serum Institute, all these people, they worked together to come up with a vaccine very fast, and government has done as much as possible to support this. So with this, I will hand over to Dr. Jugnu.
So Jugnu is going to be talking something very different from the so-called biosimilars that we were talking about. I am pretty glad she said that an Indian company like hers was very successful in the recent Boston event to garner quite a number of meetings, and she was in a position to say, can we meet later, which means that's a fantastic thing, that the number of meetings that were there were very high. Even though I'm a bit jealous, she said she was mobbed by people, that I don't like that. That's not a great word. So I will allow her to talk about something which is very, very interesting. It concerns the data of this country. It concerns the data about patients. It concerns about how this entire process has been streamlined. So this is something that is happening right here in Hyderabad. So, and she is originally from Boston. I built a beautiful building for her even before I knew her, and that is in IICT, and she has occupied that building and she's working out of that place there. So over to you, Jugnu.
Thanks so much. You're very kind. So my name is Jugnu Jain. My background is that of a geneticist. I did my master's and bachelor's from India, and then I went abroad for my PhD. I was in Cambridge, England for my PhD in genetics. And then I was at Cambridge, Massachusetts in US for my postdoc at Harvard Medical School, and then joined a company called Vertex Pharmaceuticals, which is actually a poster child for making medicines that are in rare diseases that were considered untreatable, like cystic fibrosis. So I cut my teeth on drug discovery at Vertex. I was there for 14 years and really learned a lot about target identification, validation, molecules, bringing lead molecules into INDs and clinical trials. So while I was at Vertex, we used to have a number of different chemical classes against the same target. And there would be a lot of discussion internally which molecule to take forward for scaling up, for tox, for animal models. And in cells, in enzymes, most of the molecules those molecules would be looking the same, but they cannot predict toxicity and efficacy and many other aspects that you can do only later. So we used to use patient-derived cells and models to further verify whether those molecules would work in actual cancer patient cells, because our lab models are very reductionist. They do not mimic human biology completely. So whenever we used to do that work, we would be picking CROs in US, Canada, UK, Europe, never in India. And so, because I'm originally from India, I would think, why is it that we have such a high population? We have no dearth of patients. We have no dearth of scientific talent, right? Indians comprised a very high number of percentage of scientists at Vertex. Why is it that we don't have these kinds of companies in India? So it turns out that there was no systematic biobank. I'm cutting to the chase. So there was no biobank which is systematically storing diseased samples along with patient data, because each sample, whether it's blood, whether it's tissue, contains the history of that disease. And each sample is different from the other one. So that is where you need to validate your target, your diagnostic, your biomarker, your molecule, because that is going to reflect the diversity and complexity of the clinical trial much better than inbred mice or homogenized cell lines that are grown on plastic with human serum, with bovine serum, which obviously human beings don't consume. So that's triggered the idea of starting a biobank, which is now in its 11th year, Sapien Biosciences. It's a partnership with Apollo Hospitals. We have exclusive access to the entire network of Apollo. We are headquartered in Hyderabad with people present in Delhi, Chennai, Bangalore, Kolkata, Mumbai, etc., Vishakhapatnam. So what is a biobank? At a very basic level, I would say, just like you go to a bank, it has money. And it is able to give you money, it can take money, it can enable you to buy a house or a car or a scooter or whatever. So our biobank is a collection of human patient samples. These are not kidneys and organs, these are tissue samples that are removed normally during surgery, like cancer tissues or liver transplants, so the bad liver is thrown out, and often a lot of blood samples which are taken for diagnostic purposes. And so using those patient samples, you are able to detect how a disease starts, what makes one diseased patient different from another, how disease progresses, why do people respond to certain drugs and why some don't, why do people become resistant, what are the mechanisms underlying resistance to drugs. So you can improve the drug discovery process and personalized medicine based on the patient's characteristics. The word precision medicine is used very often. What does it mean? It doesn't mean that a company like Merck is going to go make 1 billion drugs and each one is suitable only for one person. No. It means that if there are 1,000 drugs, which of those drugs should be given to that patient? So it's the choice of the drugs and the treatment that is personalized based on the person's disease, stage, weight, BMI, many factors. So that is personalized medicine. So we now have a biobank of close to 250,000 patient sample. This is an area which is, in terms of biopharma, as you referred, India is now the most populous country. We have overtaken China in this one area. There's no dearth of patient samples. There is no dearth of data. But we are not systematically creating that collection to be able to understand our diseases, our risk factors, and how to make it better. So I'll come back and give examples maybe when we discuss export and other things, but it's a biobank, and we are the first biobank in India, and now the largest.
So one of the things that we will be advocating from the industry side is possibly suggesting to the government that such valuable data that is there. For example, during COVID, we realized what data means, what sequencing means, what those things mean. So there is a rapid movement now for sequencing the microbiome, both from inside as well as from outside. A lot of the microbes that we have on our skin apparently are not even present in some of the European humankind there. So what it appears is, Jugnu was also mentioning to me that the data from the Asian region as a whole is something that is quite inadvertently poorly represented, which means we are possibly taking pizza every day, morning, lunch and dinner, instead of our own idlis and dosas. That's how our drugs are designed. So I think we'll have to redo some of those things. And so one of the things that we should be starting very soon is to ensure that the microbiome sequences are all very nicely tabulated. Like we have a TDKL for all the medicinal plants. I think there's a whole range of genetic things that need to be preserved, particularly from the question of bio-wars, bio-weaponizing. We need to be very careful that some of these things are very nicely stored there. So I think people like Jugnu are sitting on data so important in terms of how a patient is going to recover or not recover in terms of the treatment that's meted out to him. So the third and last panelist in our system is Nitish. He represents the big pharma. So obviously he will have an insight. I'm very excited to know what are these guys doing in India, because that's the most important thing that we would like to know. Each country you do something there. So what do you do here? So go ahead.
So thank you very much. Good morning. First of all, good morning the delegates and plus all the participants here. And thank you very much the panelists, Dr. Murli and Dr. Jugnu and Subrar sir here to set up the platform. And thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to represent Merck. So my name is Nitish Kumar. I am from Merck Life Science Private Limited. Basically, this is the subsidiary or the support for a company called as Merck KGaA, headquartered in Darmstadt, Germany. And if I want to represent or call it in one word what Merck Life Science is, so I can call it as the world's oldest pharmaceutical company. So we have been established in 1668, when I think you must have remembered when Shivaji Maharaj was fighting with Mughals, and that time we have been founded, right? So our founder, Dr. Emmanuel Merck, was busy in formulating some of the quality products in Germany that time when we were fighting with Mughals. And at that time, I think Taj Mahal was, I think, just 10 years old. So, so you must be, I mean, this is the way I remember my company to, when it has been founded. So yes, so we are the world's oldest pharmaceutical company. And in India, we are having all the pharmaceutical divisions from Merck. So Merck has evolved away from 1668 from life science to healthcare, and then I think you all have been associated with Merck, and you will be asking how. So when you are searching your phones or your iPhones, the LEDs which you are having in your phones or in your iPhones are being manufactured by Merck. So this is also one of the fact, right? So we are also in the performance material. So yeah, but yes, of course, the life science division is one of the biggest or the biggest contributor for Merck KGaA. We actually call us Merck KGaA outside of US and Canada because of some legal issues. We used to call us as Millipore Sigma or EMD Millipore in US and Canada because of there are some legal issues. But outside of US and Canada, we call it as Merck KGaA. As I told, we are into 3 divisions. Basically, we deal with life science, healthcare, and performance material. Out of that, life science is one of the biggest contributor. Approximately, we are doing a business of around more than 20 billion euros overall globally. And out of that, almost 2.4 billion euros we are spending in R&D. And that is how we call us as a vibrant science and technology company. And we believe in science. That's why we are calling us as a solution provider for the industry. So most of the time, if you call us as we are the solution provider or call us as an end-to-end solution provider for the industry. We also have a lot of services from our end, basically dealing with from providing the end-to-end solution. So it is like services like CDMO-based kind of services where we also have our places in ADCs, or I would say antigen drug conjugates or microbial biopharmaceuticals, where we also serve or support the industry to develop the drug manufacturing from end to end. Either it is from upstream or downstream, or providing them the services from the validation of the molecule, or giving them the support from the regulatory regulatory aspects. So as Dr. Murli was mentioning that now since there are 17 blockbusters going to be expired in next 4 or 5 years, and there are a lot of opportunities coming up for the startups and the industries to coming into the biopharmaceutical market. And that is where Merck supports these startups and the industry to develop the process, or I would say optimize the process, or to be more cost effective. You know, I mean, if you see, since also Dr. Murli was mentioning that there are a lot of innovator companies who are providing a drug, like for example in 100%, and then there are a lot of competitions coming from the industry to sell it at 80% lower or 50% lower. So then the question comes that how to make it more cost effective, how to make the drug more cost effective. And that is what the people from Merck, or as an expert, we used to provide them support to make the drug cost effective by providing them the solutions for process development, and as well as to optimize the system by increasing the productivity, or I would say by increasing the process intensifications. So as a whole, I would say Merck in India, in a global way also, we are the solutions provider, raw material provider, I would say, or service provider for this industry. And definitely we collaborate with the industry in a broad way to make the drug manufacturers and coming the drugs or giving them speed to the market kind of thing. So yeah, that is what the Merck is. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nitish. I think you put it beautifully. You know, the context, I think I can never forget now, that you are now the oldest and Taj Mahal was only probably a decade old. It's a fantastic one. I really liked it. So I will go to Chakrabarti Saab now, ask him one pertinent question. So he was right. I mean, we were the founding fathers of BIRAC when it was actually done. I mean, there are a lot of lovely ladies here. I don't want to sound very old, but that is how it was actually. We were one of the earliest. The first project itself was carried out by Able in the pilot mode, and then it was switched into, it was called BIPP, then it became BIRAC. So I am not a dinosaur, as you might see from these narrations. The one question that I have is that since we have set up a very ambitious task of growing the bioeconomy from the current 100 billion, and I think the PM is way ahead of us pushing for a faster 300 billion achievement than what we have projected, because I think that keeps coming up all the time. Industry and others have been accused of being very slow. So is there any vision that BIRAC is developing in terms of facilitating? I'm not even talking about funding here. I'm talking about facilitating. Are there going to be those things that are going to come into play? Meaning that what are your version 2 of BIRAC, let's put it that way, for the next 10 years? That's number one. The second question is also connected with the narration that Jugnu was mentioning, is that there is going to be a trend towards these interventions being very personal, be it using microbes, be it using probiotics, be it using a certain type of drugs. So which means the burden of reaching out to a more number of people. So it's almost like B2B, D2C. So you will be entering a drug situation which is equivalent to a D2C for patients. So is BIRAC gearing up for those types of work? And are there startups currently that you are funding in that area? These are the two questions for you. If it is tough, you can always pass.
Thanks for this very pertinent questions. Actually, I just, a bit before we start, the panel, actually today's panel, if I see the name, is to discuss the urgency and for capacity building and expanding the scope of the National Biopharma Mission to make biomanufacturing 100 billion in India by 2025, which we have already achieved, and double by 2030. So this is what main target is. Because the name National Biopharma Mission has come, I just wanted to mention that one, that National Biopharma Mission 1.0, okay, which was initiated in 2018. And this was, again, it's a program initiated by Government of India, implemented through BIRAC. So where we have 1,500 crore, this is a total 1,500 crore project over the 5 years. So World Bank supported 50% of that, and the Government of India is supporting 50%. So World Bank, of course, it's not free money, it's coming as a loan. But this is, so where, actually it has started in 2018, and to move to this level, I mean, to get to the level of 100 billion or even more, so what I need to have is the creation of the ecosystem, infrastructure that you need to build. So it is not only the product development that you do it, but you also support other areas where there are many more products can come into the market. So through this program, actually, we have supported almost 139 overall projects. So out of 139 projects, there are, I think, say a few dozens maybe linked to the products, whether it is the vaccines, whether it's the biotherapeutics, or the biosimilars. We have, I think, if I say the number, around 20-25 infrastructure facilities, where you talk about the animal house facilities for testing, where you talk about the manufacturing facilities, like the GMP manufacturing facilities at the pilot level, or the testing facilities we supported, like some of the institutes, like IICT, we supported creating their, the infrastructure much better with respect to the testing and getting some accreditation from NABL or others. So there are other private parties also that has been supported, like Syngene also got support. There are many more of them. We have also, through this program, we have created, as he mentioned, biorepositories. So for the cell banks, so we have funded like IMTech for the microbial cell banking facility, and NCCS Pune for the mammalian cell banking facility, which is very important that we should have a GMP cell banking facility. So you need to look into a bigger horizon when you are actually trying to achieve something, so that it will be easy for people to move into those sectors where the facilities are available. Clinical trial facility networks that has been created, almost 36, along with Mission COVID Suraksha, around more than 50 hospitals now trained to do the clinical trial at the level of the global standard. And today the companies like Pfizer and others are also coming to those clinical sites to do their trials. So it is not only the infrastructure to those hospitals, the training, the GCP training, ethical practices, creating the SOPs, also creating the data, epidemiological data. So we have looked into different disease sectors, like oncology. We know that for the biopharma oncology, how important it is. Diabetology, it's a big burden for India. Ophthalmology. So all these areas, this has been done to some extent. I mean, it is not enough, as I said. Now to move forward, we need to look beyond this. Today we are talking about, as Dr. Murli mentioned, Dr. Jugnu was talking about, that point of care. We are going more personalized. And also we have to have this point of care as close to the patient as possible, as many patients, because patient doesn't need to come to the hospital. I mean, you can do much more diagnosis before that. There are plenty of startups. Like today, AI, we talk about AI. AI is creating havoc every field. Why not in the biological field? And it is already doing. And we have plenty of startups that are in this field developing products which are very useful for very early diagnosis. Google spoke about retinal scan for your cardiovascular disease profile. I mean, these are the possibilities that we are looking into. And we are actually from BIRAC to tell you, specifically for the digital health, we have a few focus calls with respect to the emerging technologies or the national priorities, and then support this kind of startups. But this is not enough. Again, it is not enough. As we said that, okay, government is supporting to create a kindergarten. But now we have to go to the college and the university. These people has to qualify to that level. And the amount of investment required is not enough what we are providing. So today, I think there are many good products are going out of the country, developing here, going out of the country because they're getting the support in those places, and definitely clinical trial and the launch will be done in that. So which is, I'm not saying that this is bad, but definitely if we want to be self-sustainable, we need to have much more investment coming into the private or other organization to support that one. Just maybe I will finish with
please.
one additional thing. One, the more thing is that today we talk about One Health. We don't talk about only human health. Because if you have better human health, you have to keep everything healthy. Your environment has to be healthy. In environment, we are talking about the plants, we are talking about the animals, we are talking about everything. And this requires a collaborative effort. And this is also what we are trying to focus, that creating a consortia to have all these people coming together. And I mean, very good to see even beyond this One Health, I mean, we need to have the multiple collaboration with different institutes, different countries, because today, because of globalization, everything is open. Technology is developed anywhere in the world. And we need to capitalize that, bring it to us, to here, so that the people are taking use of these kind of technologies for future. So that's probably, I mean, this is what we are trying to see that BIRAC to move into the next 10 years.
That's really nice to hear. So Nitish, I have, just for a time check for all of you, it's 11:04 at this point of time. In about 6-7 minutes, I'll wind up the first session, because that was supposed to be for an hour. We started 10 minutes late, and I'm using those 10 minutes here. So Nitish, one question to you is from where you left, is that there are several new companies that are emerging out of India. I think one of the things that the Indian system, where I would say it's not broken, but we still don't have certain links in the system, is what the BIRAC representative was also mentioning, is that we don't have, those big fundings that happen. The second thing is that we don't have the big brothers to tell us, hey, you know what, we have a problem, why don't you start solving this? Exactly. So it's all about the same question here. Your version 2 of your existence in India, how are you planning to reach out to these absolutely stunning new young breed of kids coming out of the block to support? So would you want to be reaching out to them differently than what you have been doing?
Thanks, Dr. Mulli, for bringing out that point. And that's a very important point, actually, which we also saw or noticed, from long time. And then we found out that there is a huge gap coming from the industry and then the budding scientists or the people coming from the colleges or from the startups who are very early at the stage. So they need those kinds of support, or I would say kind of a resource required for them to grow up from the industry if they are finding out or they are having a very small startups or something like that, they're coming out of fresh out of the college. So we noticed that, and then from Merck, we are trying to collaborate with these institutes. Like for example, I just take an example how Merck has been collaborated with IIT Delhi. So we are being collaborating with IIT Delhi from long time, and I would say, I'd not say that it has been completed now, but yes, we are on the verge of collaborating with IIT Delhi, with Dr. Anurag's lab, and then we are trying to fetch up those things from their lab, that how we can co-develop the ecosystem for the startup companies who are also tied up with IIT Delhi and something like that. Similarly, we are also trying to collaborate with some of the institutes or some of the colleges. Like for example, I can take one example. Recently, we have taken up step to collaborate with RV College of Engineering or RV Group of Institutes in Bangalore, where this is our one of the CSR activity which we are doing. And then what we have done so far for them is we have developed a curriculum for them which is being inculcated into their own curriculum. So which is like, for example, they will be, normally they don't get an exposure to the syllabus or the curriculum what they have apart from their current syllabus. So they don't get the exposure to the industry. And normally, if even I have also felt the same thing when I came from college to industry. I also felt the same thing that whatever I have learned in college and whatever I'm seeing in the industry is completely different. So I didn't got those opportunity at that time to get into those or the exposure what the industry is doing. It's completely different. So those things we are trying to close the gap by giving them those exposure. And Merck as a company in India, we have a full-fledged manufacturing lab. I would say this is called as M Lab, which is a part of our MSAT division, which is basically a manufacturing science and technology division. We have a M Lab in Bangalore, in Pune, where we try to give hands-on training to these budding scientists or the startup companies by providing them the knowledge of how the industry looks like. And then we give them an exposure of process development, developing the drug on the regulatory point of view, I mean, how we can support them on regulatory point of view, how we can support them on optimization point of view, how you can develop the drug from a process of development point of view from upstream to downstream. Those are the things we try to give them a hands-on training. And normally, I mean, this is one of the gaps which we have identified. And that is how Merck supports these companies. And as well as not only from the institutes or the colleges we are collaborating, we are also collaborating with regulatory authorities. Like for example, we are collaborating with a PDA India chapter. So we are also trying to see how these regulators should get the knowledge or they should get the exposure of the recent trends in the biopharmaceutical industry. Like for example, most of the time if you see the regulators are not very much accustomed to antibody drug conjugate, which is a very recent development and it is coming in India right now. They are not very much accustomed to continuous manufacturing, for example. So continuous manufacturing is also a very recent development in the drug manufacturing process, where we need a lot of brainstorming, a lot of things need to be changed now and to be inculcated into regulatory filings and dossiers. So these are the things where Merck can support. Merck can leverage the expertise to these institutes, colleges, and the regulatory authorities, and that is how we support the industry.
Wonderful. So I am going to throw the floor open to audience if there's a question. If there is no question, then I need to ask Jugnu my last question there. So if there is anybody in the audience who wants to, please, you can use the mic. Yes, Veeramani ji, please.
What is the scope for SMEs to get into biopharma? You said about outlay is very high.
So no, you want to take this question? I can explain, sir. It's SMEs.
More Indian companies, pharma companies want to come into biologicals, particularly from the SME point of view. Is there any scope for them to get in?
Actually, quite a lot of the companies are SMEs. I mean, including some of the startups which are there, he's mentioning.
But you said
No, but what happens
100
is,
million, 150 million.
so the natural progression for all these companies is they will have to raise the next tranche of funds. And that is the link that we were talking about is missing in India. Or they may have to flip the company into the US or to other countries which are having some sort of an ecosystem, and then they have to continue from there. Or they would be marrying one of the bigger companies who will be taking them over, and they will be running it from there. So these are the three possible scenarios there. But just want to also keep you informed, Veeramaniji, our death rate, like we used to have in good old days when delivery was there, premature babies, death. So in biotech, we also have a very high death rate. So 98% of us who start are known to die. And this is not a statistics just for India. So please don't look at us as if we are dying. They are dying everywhere. But we are also dying at the same rate. So our success chances are only 2%. So out of the 6,000, you can calculate the number which is there. Yeah, but it requires good investment.
So Murli, I just wanted to add before we finish two things, because you had asked how can we increase our exports, how do we reach that magic number that has been set. And I feel there are two sectors or two areas which we can improve. So you mentioned I was at Bio, which is the largest networking meeting in the world for life sciences companies. It is a 3.5-day networking meeting, one-on-one networking. I call it speed dating. Done so well professionally, I think we can learn a lot from it in BioAsia or any of the meetings that are held in India. I had 40 meetings there, and I almost went crazy because that is 12 meetings in a day, 25 minutes each. You barely get time to go to the restroom and eat. So there was such a demand for biobank services. We are a B2B company. This is a demand because we have a very large patient dividend. We have tremendous data, but it is very fragmented and hardly collated. And yet, despite saying digital data, digital health, there are no specific funds available to retrieve, collate, structure, and code data, which we can apply for. We have tried, but nothing has worked. And yet, even small sets of data, which is matched with patient samples. For example, we have a database of 10,000 breast cancer cases where we have the samples and we know the patient, how they were diagnosed, how they were treated, what is the tissue. We know what treatment they underwent and whether they responded or not. Those 10,000 patients will bring in a lot more money than 10 million people for whom you have no data. So I feel there are two things we must do as an export-oriented company. 80% of our revenue comes from abroad because very little innovation is happening here. Let's be honest, we are into similars. One, the export documentation and forex treatment is still a pain. So the banks require you so many various documents that are required when you are getting money in various foreign amounts. There was a scheme announced by the government, I think in 2016 or so, export incentive scheme. Looked very nice on paper, but it hasn't been implemented well. So the DGFT offices were either closed during pandemic, and I think part of the problem is if you are an innovative company, the government doesn't understand innovation. So people in DGFT don't understand what we are doing. They don't understand our exports. They don't understand our services. They keep asking us, what are you manufacturing? And I keep telling them we are not manufacturing human tissues. Nobody can. So one is that the implementation of existing schemes is a major part for incentivizing. Second is, if we want to work with people abroad, we have consultants, we have advisors whom we wish to pay or we have to pay in US dollars or euros. That process is also extremely painful. And the cost of doing business is not low. So if we are a mature economy, we want to play in the world, then we have to work out our forex treatment. That is not there. The last thing I would say is we are still focused very much on hardware. When you're talking about facilities in IICT or so on, it's still very hardware oriented. We are building buildings every time. I go to institutes and it's an 80 crore building that has come up, but it's short on faculty. It doesn't have the, really good research culture. I think the IT sector has shown us where your capex can be low, but your opex and your HR cost is high, and you are innovating. So we need to go into a more software-oriented approach. We have very good IT. The data that is publicly available from UK biobanks and others can be mined. In bio, the number of companies I met that have less than 10 people who have raised over $5 million is phenomenal, because they are outsourcing. They are leveraging existing companies. Now, that would not fall under the typical BIRAC format where 20% has to be CapEx, 20% has to be this. I think the models have to change if we are to become AI-driven and data-driven.
Yeah. So one of the good things is that you have come here. So Uday Garu's team is the one which actually facilitates quite a lot for even the pharma industry, some of the issues that you talked. So one of the things is that you should talk to PharmExcel on some of these, because even when we have problem, we run to them to understand how to solve it. If it's a commerce ministry or if it's the health ministry, they are the people who facilitate that, number one. Number two is the message you gave for Dr. Veeramani is very good. I had asked them, please come to bio this year. And I can't self-certify that. Now that you said that it was very good and blah, blah and all that, I want them to take notice. So next year they are part of the setup here. So I'll be very happy. Please, go ahead, sir. Your question, I think that will be the last.
Yeah. My name is Venkat. I'm from Nigeria. Madam, my question was actually driven to you only. But in fact, your answer, the last answer confused me further. I had question both for both of you because I think it is more linked. And basically, I'm an Indian. I have been brought up here, but I have started my business in Nigeria. And I'm also the General Secretary of Indian Pharmaceutical Association there. And you are right, as your funds are majorly coming 80% from abroad, for us also, almost 60 to 70% of the business from India to Nigeria is coming through Indians there, though we are a small number. So it's the same way. So I wanted to ask you the question is that, how do you really make money? Because now that you have said that you are still wanting some regulations to be streamlined, that you are able to pay certain people, you want to take certain money. But I wanted to know if you want to set up it as a business in Nigeria, how do we make money out of it? Is it only investment? If the government support is not there, other things are there. That's one question to you, madam. And to you, sir, we are Indians who are abroad. And unless we are not politicians, our money do come to India, finally. So at the end of it, any investment which goes outside the country on Indians, it is bound to come back here only because we feel safe, that our money is safe in India. Is there something which can be done for them abroad? I think Nigeria being the 5th largest pharmaceutical importers for India, I hope I'm not wrong in my statistics, and it is the 3rd largest export from India, which is contributing 14%. Do you think anything can be done for the most populous country in Africa and having the highest GDP and getting regularized?
I'll give you my brief answer. We are a B2B company. We are not a B2G or a B2C. So we work with the pharmaceutical, diagnostic, equipment makers, very many companies who are looking for high quality, ethically procured, well annotated either samples or data coming from those samples. So a very good example is, for example, a company that is asking us for digital images of 1,000 breast cancers. All of those breast cancer samples are stained with 5 biomarkers that prognosticate which patient should be getting which type of first-line treatment. Today, that requires a very sophisticated pathology lab to do those tests and to give the diagnosis. They are AI ML companies who are looking for these images whereby looking at a very simple stain with the spatial geography of the tissue, they can predict this patient is actually this marker, without even having to stain, using our data as their training set. So obviously, we will get paid for that service of having our 1,000 breast cancer cases, which have such good data that we have collated over 10 years. We are making those slides, we are digitizing the slides and sharing the images in an anonymized manner, and we get paid for that. So we have a number of such services, which are very custom services in the pharma diagnostics area, the kind of pharma companies I used to work in. And similarly, many equipment manufacturers like sequencing companies are always looking for patient samples because they're always coming out with better and better technology, and they need to validate that with patient samples to see this is better than this is high sensitivity, higher accuracy. We work with companies that are making molecules, and we test them in actual patient tumor cells to tell them this will work or not work in 3D spheroid models that mimic a tumor. So we have a number of services and products that generate revenue, and that is our funding model. I don't know about Nigeria, frankly, so I cannot comment.
Thank you. So just be aware, data is supposed to be the next big oil, right? So she's sitting there 10 years later. You can ask her how she became a billionaire. She's just on the way to that. Yeah.
He's absolutely right, actually.
Well, I mean, with respect to the funding that we are providing, I don't think it is restricted to, okay, it is restricted to the nationality. Of course, it is provided only to the Indian, but it is not restricted to where he is sitting. So then if they want to do something in India, because there are a lot of, I think, companies that has been formed in India by Indian, they are non-resident Indians. So there is a provision to do that one. So I don't think there is any issue. And second thing is that we do have the kind of a facility. I don't know, with Nigeria, probably we do not have the government-to-government relationship with respect to the startup, the training program. So with some other countries we do have. So we do send startups from here. I mean, this is one of the BIRAC mandate that we send to other countries so that they get trained and then they understand their economy, their business in that particular country, and then come back and develop something for them. So it is there. So you can explore that. Thank you.
So thank you very much. I know we are running out of time, so I would like to first of all thank Dr. Balasubramaniam here. If you may rise, Dr. Balasubramaniam, he is from ABLE. He was a very successful bureaucrat, if I may call it, in Karnataka. He was assisting the Karnataka Biotech. He took the greatest risk of moving away from a very secure government job to join ABLE to support the industry. He has been the person who has helped me to curate the speakers here. So you see how good he has picked the speakers to keep this audience alive for an hour. So thank you all very much for that. Uday Garu, Lakshmi ji, thank you so much. Veeramani Saab, Chakrabarti Saab, every big names is here. Thank you, all of you. And we will, I presume, have another session sometime at 12 for the vaccines. So whoever wants to come back to that session at 12, please do. Thank you very much. I leave the floor to the organizers.
Better you ask everyone to come back. Otherwise it's going to be a challenge.
Thank you so much, sir, and I really appreciate the kind of a contribution and the support given by ABLE for curating these two sessions and making this so insightful discussions. And our special thanks to all the distinguished panelists, Dr. Jugnu and Dr. Shupra and Mr. Nitish, for sharing their experiences and their insights and the way forward for the emerging industry looking to venture into this market. I really appreciate your time and your insights for this august gathering. And I would request our chairman, our director general, to come forward and facilitate our distinguished panelists with a token of memento as a gratitude from Pharmaceutical side. Request Sri Veeramani ji and Uday Bhaskar ji to kindly come forward and present a memento to Dr. Murali. Okay. So beginning with beginning with Mr. Nitish Kumar from Merck. Thank you very much, Mr. Nitish. I also I recognize our Vice Chairman, Mr. Namit Joshi, also kindly. Please join. Sir. Please present a memento to Dr. Shubhra Chakravarti from BIRAC by Mr. Namit Joshi, Vice Chairman of PharmaCell. And memento presentation to Dr. Jugnu Jain, CEO of Sepian. To our President of ABLE, Dr. B. Murali ji. And I request everyone for a group photograph, and I also request Mr. Bala to join for the group photograph. So the next session on vaccine is going to happen in the same hall, and it will be starting at 12 o'clock. So we have distinguished panelists from Indian Vaccine Manufacturers Association and the other vaccine manufacturing companies. So request everyone to kindly join back again at 12 o'clock. industry has recommended tremendous strides during the COVID pandemic, and it has put the position of India on the global platform, the kind of development in Indian manufacturing of the vaccine and by biotech institute, and especially the development of India applying vaccines and the vaccine program to the unprivileged society across the country. So in today's Harshvardhan, representing the Indian Vaccine Manufacturers Association, is joining today's panel session. So with that note, I would like to invite our distinguished panelists and the moderator to kindly come forward and grace the dais, starting with Dr. Murli, the President and Council of Presidents from ABLE, and Dr. Vinod Pantula from Dr. Reddy's Laboratories, Mr. Brij Baluni from Zydus Group, Mr. Ratin Tomar from Yapan Bio, and Dr. Harshvardhan from the Indian Vaccine Manufacturers Association. Please give them a big round of applause, please.
Thank you, Lakshmiji. In the previous panel discussion, I looked like I was slightly senior, so I was insisting that from Bharat Biotech I have Harshvardhanji, so that I can at least feel much younger here in this. So I think that part has been nicely achieved. So we will stick to the time as much as possible. So I request all the fellow panelists also to help me with that. So today I'm following a very similar format that I did in the last one, where I will just give a very quick introductory one, and then you can go from right to left or left to right, introduce yourselves and your institution, and then we will go ahead with the remaining questions there. So just to set the tone right for this meeting, we also had an animal vaccine manufacturer in our panel. We wanted deliberately to have one to bring in another perspective. And the reason is because a lot of us have been speaking about One Health. And so it is very important that we also discuss that. And what are the key drivers of the vaccine industry? So very quickly, without going into, I think the most beaten topic has been COVID. So I would not even venture into that area of the troubles and triumphs that we have gone through. But I would like to start in a very patriotic note by giving a big hand to these people who actually made our lives, and we are standing here today. So I have no second opinion on that. So this is something that it is fantastic here. So I mentioned to you in the previous panel discussion as to how the bioeconomy of this country is growing, and how is it shaping the way in which our lives are going to be in the next 15-20 years. And I did mention to you that we were growing very steady at about 18%, and where we are currently there. If you take the vaccine industry, it is one big component of this. So this is one of the classical industries in India, whether we don't know whether the tail is wagging the dog or the dog is wagging the tail, meaning that vaccine is the big thing there, but they still fall under the umbrella of the bioeconomy that is actually part of it. So we are very proud as a nation that almost every other child is taking our vaccine, and our dosing has gone up, and we are doing pretty well. But the key to this whole debate that's going to happen for the future is all about the inequality that was taught to us during COVID times, which actually said how countries, humans will behave in case their life is at stake over their own spouses, their own children, and their own families. So we demonstrated how clearly that we could be a very isolated animal when it comes to a crisis when it is there. So I think vaccine industry is the one socially that keeps us together. I think that's something that we have to understand. Otherwise, we could be fighting each other for survival, like the primitive old days which are there. So I'll very quickly give you a perspective that I have put up here. So there is every industry has a driver. So the driver during COVID times was obviously COVID, so that was no brainer there. But then going further, what is the likely scenario that's going to happen? So people who are in the pharma industry know that a lot of the bigger companies deprioritized doing any work on the infectious background, meaning that there were quite a lot of small molecules that used to come up. There used to be a pipeline, there used to be a number of clinical trials that used to go through. Those have somehow started coming down in the way they were originally conceived. So which means infectious diseases were left quite unguarded in a number of other places. And there were very strong messages that emerging world and countries which are having lesser hygienic issues have to fend for themselves. So I think when those challenges are thrown, that's when these opportunities are created. And then we start addressing those opportunities. So in every adversity, there is one of those things that is taken care of. So nearly 40 such infectious diseases which are out there. These gentlemen who are here are the custodian of how we are going to get out of this and move forward. Just to give the perspective here for the chemistry-dominated pharma people, this is also an industry which requires a good timeline. It also requires good investment before you are able to reach there. So there are cases where you have had about $200 to $500 million, in some cases even more, when you actually want to put it in. So this industry, fortunately now, has a new type of, let's say, call it vaccine that is coming out. And so there are a couple of these companies which are dealing with mRNA and the other type of vaccines which are also coming up there. So for people like us who really do not know much about vaccines, we call everything as vaccines, right? I mean, basically it's called a vaccine. Okay, it's a vaccine. But, you know, if you classify them, you have recombinant vaccine, you have conjugate vaccine, you have inactivated vaccine, you'll have the subunits that you were talking about as vaccines, toxoids, messenger RNA, DNA, and there is a whole range of, you know, the new viral vectors and others that have come up, which are also part of the vaccine system. So for a Puritan, the definition of vaccine, which we were taught in our biology classes, has now gone through a complete gambit, a sea of change in terms of what they are called. And without realizing the nuances of those type of vaccines that exist, we have had hundreds of, if not hundreds, more than hundreds of debates in terms of during COVID on what type of vaccines India should do, why it should do this, what it should do that, and so on and so forth. So a lot of those pollution must be still in our heads. And I'm sure during the panel discussion, all those cobwebs are going to be completely cleared by this group here. As I promised, I wanted to just make a small reference to the animal vaccine, even though I don't have the person here with me before I open to the panel here. So the animal vaccine segment is also growing pretty nicely, and the reason is very simple. I mean, it is something which you don't associate directly like us with infection, but we can associate it with a lot of changing food habits, lot of type of food that we consume, like, you know, beef and veal and buffalo meat and mutton and chicken. All these creatures also need to be looked after. They will have to be vaccinated. They will have to be taken care of. And also the companion systems, wherein the number of people who carry pets at home, cats and dogs and other things, they all need those type of protections that are needed, so that when the the human-animal interaction happens, we are safe, they are safe. So that is something that is also another thing that we'll have to keep in mind. So the trend of the industry, it's also dependent on the way we socialize and the way we shape our lives, the way we eat. So that is the key, how this vaccine industry's needs are going to be looked into. So it is not simply that COVID is gone, so what do we do next? No, no, no, I'm not sure any of these gentlemen are even worried about COVID sitting in this room. They all know what their next task is about. So it's only for us, we believe that there was a surge in terms of vaccine, and so what's going to happen now? So that's the difference between the two. So one of the last things that I want to mention is the food intake, as you can see from the animal industry. It is about the fats that we consume. About 17% of the fats come from the animals, and about 33% of the proteins come from the animals. So whether some of us are vegans or vegetarians, we may not relate to this fact, but the real problem is some of these things are actually taken care. So I wish the other person from the vaccine industry, from the animal, was also here to add on to my commentary. But since she's not here, I thought I should make a mention, because this group will be dominating in terms of the human vaccines that we are going to talk about. So ladies and gentlemen, stand by. We are now going to have from left to right the panelists introducing themselves and their company, and what sort of products that you are actually dealing with. And then the second part, after you finish, will be the question on how do you see the future from here, and what are the things that we should expect, particularly from the pipeline. Because every other day there is a new virus that's coming out, and especially these respiratory ones are quite dangerous, I would say. So we will have to understand how that is. So one last commentary. I worked for the US Defense, sir, and I worked on trying to find out whether Pseudomonas was going to cause Pseudomyeli was going to cause a problem. And in those days when I worked, we believed that X country could weaponize it. I don't want to call by the name, it's not a nice thing. So X country could weaponize it. And so we were all asked to use synthetic biology, and I had a great platform that could make small molecules, and it could also by evolution it could make it even much better. So which means we could do it against a target. But believe me, the speeds with which we worked, Pentagon and Washington said, this is not going to give us any rapid response. Rapid response means the response these gentlemen have given us. When there was a pandemic that broke out, and the way they prepared vaccine and gave it to us, that is real-time rapid response. So if any technology that you believe is still very good, and I believe my technology was very good, was still not found to be adequate in terms of what these gentlemen have done. So over to you to begin.
Thank you, Dr. Murli. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Aten Tomar. In terms of my background, I've been in the biotech industry for more than 20 years. I have a bachelor's degree in biotech and biochemical engineering, master's in biological engineering. Started my career as a process engineer, doing process development, scale-up, tech transfer to GMP manufacturing. And came back to India, established the biologics business for Syngene, way back when. Set up the labs and capabilities, and then I have been into different roles, moving lately in the business development, alliance management, program management type of roles. And my last job before founding Yapan Bio was President and CEO of CPL Biologicals, which is the joint venture between Cadila Pharma and Novavax from the US. In terms of Yapan Bio, we are very different from the as I call them, the big boys of vaccines industry. We are very small, early stage, if I may still call it a startup company. We founded Yapan Bio 4 years back with a focus on developing novel vaccines and gene therapy products for the global biotech companies. And mind you, this was pre-COVID. At that time also, we realized that there was a huge need for development of novel vaccines, especially the next generation vaccines, or vaccines based on next generation technologies like recombinant vaccines, virus-like particle, viral vectors, RNA, DNA vaccines, and so on and so forth. And that's really what we focused on. So we have process development and GMP manufacturing facilities at the Genome Valley in Hyderabad. And over the years, along with different projects. I can say we have developed 3 novel vaccines from the lead candidate or discovery stage to taking them to phase 1 human clinical trial stage. And also to give you a perspective of the different technologies. So the 3 vaccines have been developed. One is a recombinant virus-like particle-based vaccine in a human cell line. The other one is a protein nanoparticle in SF9 baculovirus or insect cell baculovirus expression system. And the third one is again a protein antigen in an adherent mammalian cell culture. So very different product classes, very different expression systems. So what we do is really work very closely with the clients based on the specific project and the product requirement and develop these products. And also getting into little technical stuff, but when you have novel molecules, the most important challenge is really the analytical methods to analyze and ensure that the molecule that you are making is the correct one and then that it is appropriate for eventual human use. So we have these capabilities, and then that's what we have been doing other than developing few other gene therapy products in the last few years. So, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, sir, for inviting me into the stage and to talk about vaccines. I've been associated with vaccines from 1964 when I joined Pasteur Institute of India in Kunur in Nilgiris in South. So I have now completed 58 years in that one, in vaccines. And what I would like to very briefly, because it's a long time been with this, and I'm happy that we have reached a stage now wherein I think vaccines are now being recognized as saviors, and also the rules are being now, I think yesterday I was listening to DCGI, and he did mention that they are now revising a whole lot of regulatory pathways and make it harmonious all over across, not only within the country, but also from continents across. And that's what I think COVID has taught us, to be ready and prepared to see that we not only make vaccines for the next emerging pathogens, but also see that there's an equity in the supply of those vaccines to all the countries. This is what we found out. And I must also tell you, it might shock you that people are now thinking that we must make a vaccine for the next emerging pathogen in 100 days' time. That would mean preclinicals to clinicals, whatever you take, but 100 days. I don't know how that is going to, but a great effort is going to made, is likely to be made by all of us to see that things. Also, I was just talking to BIRAC director, and I'm glad that yesterday's DCJ and yesterday's DCJ statement, they are very, very positive, and I'm very sure that I think we'll be able to meet, especially from vaccine industry in the country, in our country, I think we'll be able to meet that 100 days development. Not only development, it should be ready to supply to other countries. So as Mr. Tomar told you, there are many, I don't want to get into how many kinds of vaccines are there. I joined Bharat Biotech in 1999, May, and I was very fortunate. Dr. Ella asked me to write a project on rotavirus. And I would really like to mention the name of, remember, Dr. M.K. Bond, who was the previous secretary to the Department of Biotechnology. And I worked with him since about 2001 onwards. I've been very close to Dr. Bond. We really miss him. He's the one person who made India proud by making a vaccine. He observed in Delhi in these neonatal wards of All Indian Institute of Medical Sciences that there are a lot of neonate children, infants, who, from whom they were routinely collecting stool samples in order to find out what are the causative agents for the rotavirus-like diarrhea, for instance. And they found that there were some children who were symptomless with a reference to rotavirus disease, but then they also contained the rotavirus in their stool. So this puzzled them. He was at the time an associate professor in AIIMS at the time, and this is, I'm referring to the year 1985. They found out that this is happening, and then slowly they began to talk about it with other specialists in rotaviruses. And in 1985, Dr. Ban met Dr. Roger Glass in Kolkata, and it was under a very dramatic situation there. They began, I believe I'm trying to refer to this because they were provided accommodation in a convent. And they felt like having a drink in the evening sometime. So they had to go out, and then they started talking about rotavirus infection. This was back in 1985. And that resulted in a rotavirus vaccine for our country and also for other countries, which is now qualified under pre-qualification of WHO, thanks to Dr. Ban. I think I would like you to please remember that, recognize his contribution to rotavirus development. And I can give you a number today that over 69 million infants had the benefit of getting this vaccine across the continent. The vaccine thought of by Dr. Ban himself. So this is about rotavirus vaccine. And I'm actually, I would like to represent Indian Vaccine Manufacturers Association. That is my current role now. I was the director for viral vaccines and external affairs at Bharat Biotech for over 21 years now. And so I was associated with most of the viral vaccines. Here I would like to mention that about Covaxin, for instance, very quickly want to refer to that. Bharat Biotech was able to get into the guts it had to get into a pandemic virus, handle it, and then I'll come to the volumes there. As soon, when we learned that there is a strain isolated in India by National Institute of Virology at Pune, and Dr. Ella, our chairman, he took permission from Indian Council of Medical Research, and because NIB was is an organization under ICMR, and he sought the permission of ICMR to handle this COVID-19 SARS strain, which was isolated at Pune, and for which the kind of effort we had to make at that time was we had to send 2-3 scientists along to Pune. They were not asked to break their journey anywhere, and especially when they got the specimen of virus, the SARS virus from NIV, they had immediately written not to halt any place. At the time, because of the COVID, there were a lot of regulations crossing the state borders, for instance. So we had to take permission from all the police officials of the different states in order to go to Pune and get it back. So within less than 24 hours, we got the strain back and it was a great risk, because if anything had happened to the vehicle in which our people were traveling, that would have been a big risk, in fact. Very dramatic way it was brought from Pune to Bharat Biotech in Genome Valley. And here I must also give you the information that that Bharat Biotech had by that time over 14 years of experience in inactivating various kinds of viruses. We name the virus rabies to Japanese encephalitis to including the latest one, chikungunya, Zika, everything. Japanese encephalitis, of course. So that is the confidence Bharat Biotech had in handling a very, very dangerous virus for SARS, which was responsible for that pandemic there. And we got them. And then again, fortunately, Dr. Ella thought, I want to refer to One Health there very, very, very quickly, is that by the time we also had a BSL-3 containment facility functioning at Bharat Biotech, because we established that building in order to handle Sabin's viruses and make them into inactivated polio vaccine. That's the one in Bangalore. Bangalore was the earlier one. In BioVet, that's a group company of Bharat Biotech, where foot and mouth disease virus vaccine is produced. And I'll come back to One Health very quickly, is that so we had a fully functioning BSL-3 containment facility where people were trained for the previous 1.5 years, so they could easily handle it. We were very fortunate that these things were in place. And so you will be also surprised if I tell you that with a 0.5 ml, 2 vials came from Pune, from there, and we were making 300 liters of that virus when we started trying to make the vaccine, rotavirus, and thankfully we succeeded in that one thanks to the help from Government of India for sure, and the regulatory DCJ, everyone cooperated, and we used to get calls every now and then. I believe sometimes our people were talking from 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. in the morning when we were into this vaccine. So this is briefly about the COVID, and now WHO, as I think some of you are aware, that they have made a list of emerging pathogens. They are going to periodically revise. So most of the laboratories, people who can handle these new pathogens, they are now handling these viruses which are in the list of WHO. And so these laboratories will be ready to handle any pathogen that might come in the future. So there is always an identified group of emerging pathogens in many labs in the country. And regarding one help very quickly is that Dr. Ella is our executive chairman. Right at the beginning itself, he's from a farming background, and that's why he thought he should also help farmers. They're dependent on cattle, poultry, and all that kind of. So he started a company called BioVet in Bangalore, in collaboration with the government of Karnataka, and they're producing foot and mouth disease vaccine. And then recently it was decided that we also produce bait-based rabies vaccine for stray dogs. Just throw it, and so they also. So he is thinking of many other things to help vaccines to be developed.
And also your nasal one also, which you were talking.
Nasal one is the reason for Covaxin. Yeah, it is. Yeah. So it's a recombinant. We have a help from USA, from different university, and I think it's the first vaccine. And what we have personal experiences, after we take Covaxin, if you take one nasal shot, I think you're completely 100% protected. That's how it is. Quickly, this about Bharat Biotech, we have produced 19 vaccines, and we are into, our pipeline is very strong into, it includes tuberculosis, it includes cholera, all those things which are again emerging. So there's a huge big task ahead of Bharat Biotech for sure. Coming to IBMA, 4 giants of in the country, Serum, Bharat Biotech, biologically, for instance, Panisha Biotech and the others have to come in. They decided to have a secretariat in Hyderabad, because Hyderabad has more number of vaccine units, and we have a good office in Banjara Road #1 now. It just started out working. All are have come together to see that we do discuss with the Government of India's regulators, all the departments. There are 5 ministries which are concerned with vaccine production, and so idea is to have this organization which will deal directly with these ministries and try to harmonize, see that the grievances, if any, are taken directly to government. So this is the function of the Indian IBM employees.
Thank you, sir. Vinod, you want to continue? So just to add on this note, while the vaccines were getting popular, I think we have to also thank BIRAC and the DBT team. They were also, burning midnight oil. Very, very small things were not available at that time, and IICT was responsible for some of the functional ingredients that go into the Bharat Biotech vaccine and so on. Yeah, so they were all working like anything there. And it was during this time that Zoom was popular. So we all used Zoom. And so you now talk about Xeroxing, which means basically photocopying. So that the Zoom was one of those that came up there. So imagine this entire country was run on Zoom at that time. So I'm pretty certain that whoever was the inventor, if he had a lineage towards a particular country, he would have known what exactly we were actually doing. so that they could plan the other ones. So now to Reddy's. Yes, Vinod.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Vinod Pantula. First of all, thank you, Pharmaceutical, Dr. Bala and Dr. Murli for extending the invitation. My background, I have around 17 years of experience, core viral vaccine process development and R&D. I started my career with Shanta Biotech. I happened to work with Dr. Shubro. Under his guidance, I did some works. From Shanta, I moved to Panacea Biotech, then to Slovakia. In Europe, I was there for 2 years with a company called Immunopharm, working on a measles, rubella, and mumps vaccine. Then came back to Indian Immunologicals, then moved to Biological E. During the peak of COVID, I was with BioE, where the other team was working on the Corbevax vaccine. Then in 2021, Dr. Reddy's was having this interest to get into the vaccines. They started their journey on with Sputnik. So their idea was to do more works on vaccines beyond Sputnik or beyond COVID. So that's how, as a R&D lead, I came to Dr. Reddy's. I have worked on a wide range of vaccines, right, from like all types of viral vaccines, protein-based, VLP-based. So the idea is to work something on novel, like because we started so late in the journey, there's no time to run around or run behind the conventional established vaccines. So the idea is to work on novel therapeutic or cancer vaccines. So we are going to establish the vaccine lab soon, and most likely by first quarter next year we'll have the lab running. And you must have seen some LinkedIn updates that some investments have happened from Dr. Reddy's, that we are setting up a CDMO. So for me, my clinical development and other manufacturing will also be supported by this initiative. And of course, we have some other local supports as well. So much of opportunities are there in Hyderabad. So I look forward, maybe in the coming days, you will get to hear more from Dr. Reddy's.
Thank you. Paloni sir.
Good afternoon, and thanks Dr. Bala and Dr. Murli for inviting me to this event. So I am postgraduate in biotechnology with specialization in biochemical engineering. So I passed out in 1994. Then I have the experience in the field of the biopharmaceutical, biologicals, and the vaccines. So I initiated my career with the Altus Organics Limited, which are producing ephedrine, pseudoephedrine hydrochloride. Then I joined the Panacea Biotech, where I have worked for all the platform of the vaccines manufacturing, like the fermentation, cell cultures, and the egg-based vaccines. Then I moved to the Renvaxis, where I was involved with the manufacturing of the pravastatin and the lovastatin, the fungal-based drug for the cholesterol-reducing drug. And then I went to the Thailand with the Binet laboratories, where we were manufacturing the cellular pertussis vaccines and the other group of vaccines for the meningitis. Then I came back again, joined the Panacea Biotech, and then I worked with the Wakard Limited for the biosimilars, insulins, Datimat, Asparts, and joined the Zydus Life Sciences in 2020 at the time of the COVID. So in Zydus, we have all the platform for the vaccines manufacturing for the cell culture, fermentation, cell-based, and the vector-based vaccines. So the Zydus Life Sciences has the foundation in the field of the pharmaceuticals in 1952. And since they have initiated in the field of biologics and the vaccines from the 2005 onwards. So Zydus is manufacturing vaccines like typhoid conjugate vaccines. Then we have the tetravalent influenza vaccines. Then the TPT group of vaccines, pentavalent vaccines. Then we have the MR group of vaccines, MMR, and working on the MMRV vaccines. So Zydus is the first company which has introduced the DNA vaccines for the COVID. So we have such a large platform for the vaccines. Any vaccines, what the government of India or the others are foreseeing, the 100 days possibility, so that can be possible with the DNA vaccines. So that is in brief for this, so we can conclude.
Thank you very much. So just to put the perspective here, everybody was talking about the 100-day cycle. So normally in 100 days, nothing works in any country, not just India. 100 days you can do nothing. But the pity, even 100 days is in terms of what you need to know is about 3 months plus. So it is by that time a strain has to be identified, The strain has to be sequenced thoroughly. People will have to annotate it and understand it, and then they will have to build the entire process of the routes that they are going to take against that particular type of virus. Whether it's going to be a DNA intervention, is it going to be an RNA intervention, is it going to be the attenuated intervention, what sort of intervention is going to happen is something that they will have to decide. And after they do that, there is something that they will have to pass, that the safety is not a problem there. We don't want people to die because of the vaccine, and if at all it is on account of the virus that is there. So this entire cycle has to be done in 100 days, and this is the pandemic preparedness that the country is gearing up. Not only that, it has to fend for itself, and then as the global pandemic taught us, you have to fend for the others as well, because if you don't, they will keep coming with new variants all the time, and there is no point in saying that you are protected. That doesn't work like that. So that is the scheme of things with which they are working on. So I don't know if I'm permitted to say this, but with his permission, I visited the Orissa Bhubaneswar facility. So Krishna asked me to visit, and I went there. He was also there. So very impressive. I believe there is a pipeline of 15 that you are going to go put through that. Yes, and also for malaria, sir, if my memory serves right, you have in-licensed something from there. So that's in public. Yeah. Correct. Correct. So they are also making something for malaria. There is a very beautiful plant that Dr. Krishna Ella has put up in Orissa, and I was privy to go into the entire facility there. And so I was very, very impressed. It's a fantastic facility that he's putting up in Bhubaneswar. So these are all the new things that are likely to come up from the pipeline. So that is the question that is going to be the next one. So I alluded that to him first. So please do tell us from your respective areas, what is the investment levels that you are looking at? What is the pipeline that you are going to be chasing or building rather? And what are the important things that we are expecting from the group of vaccines that are going to be there? Like he mentioned, from Zydus, DNA is one new thing that has developed. So are you going to stick to that, or are you also going to think in terms of other possibilities like, mRNA vaccines and so on and so forth? So please take your mic and you can go around.
DNA vaccines platform we have already created. So for the mRNA we are also working, and for the vector-based vaccines we are also working, because for the COVID also we have developed the measles vector-based vaccines also, but that is on the phase 1 stage only. So COVID is over. So beside this, we are investing in new facilities which can cater to the WHO, UNICEF or the European market. So we have made investment of around 400 on the cell culture based vaccines. So right now further the construction is going on.
Very good. So Vinod, how much of in-licensing you are going to do versus how much of your own work? I mean, Dr. Reddy is known to do both, right? So what is your strategy for it?
I think like the discovery research will still be a part of the overall development plan. Mostly we are preferring a in-licensing candidate where proof of concept has been established, so that we cut time and we directly reach the preclinical development stage. But then our idea is to go more towards therapeutic vaccines, and as such, like since we have to have a balanced immunological response, balanced Th1, Th2 response, we have to see like what kind of platform we should use, whether it should be mRNA based. So there are like some proposals in works that I'm working on 3 specific programs where like one of them is a mRNA based vaccine, another one is a synthetic peptide, and the third one is a codon D optimized attenuated virus. So for different target areas. So besides this discovery research, of course I'm trying to collaborate with universities and other institutes across the world to bring some technologies. So the idea is to have a pipeline of around 10-11 products in the next 1 year when we start, and then then we have to see. Meanwhile, I am also anticipating further expansion of our lab also by that time.
Very good. So to Yapan there, I know that to give up your stake in a company and to build a company, it takes a bit of a mindset. Lot of people these days don't like to get married when they are eligible at 18 years, right? So they want to push their marriage as much as possible. So you see them get married very late. So all of us as entrepreneurs have this ability to push our marriage as much as possible. But you took the decision. When I read about you after the gentleman whom we both know mentioned to me, I said, he's done it so early in his life. So what made you do that, and what is the plan that you guys have together now that you are part of a big family now? No, that's for him, sir.
Yeah, so in case everybody doesn't know, so we founded Yapan in 2019, and in 2021, so about 2 years, Piramal took 1/3 of the stake in the organization.
In 2 years' time. So that is also one for you, Veeramaniji. It's not so bad. I gave you a very gloomy picture of 8 years and 10 years. I know all of you sounded very, I could see all your heads coming down. I was waiting for this man.
So for us, as I said, when we started, it was pre-COVID, and with a very specific focus on novel vaccines and gene therapy. And what happened with COVID is really the technologies that have been utilized for vaccines merged with gene therapy, right? Viral vectors, mRNA. So that really gave us the outlook that this is a huge potential, probably a lot more than what us as a very small startup company can digest, given the potential. And as we all know, it's a very heavy capex requirement to scale and establish larger capabilities. So we were looking for a strategic partner rather than a financial investor. I just want to be clear from the beginning, because it's not just the money, it's really in the CDMO business. And again, being new, being still very small, the credibility and the network and the trust that you have with your partners is extremely important. And it takes years and years to establish that. So that's where someone like Piramal came into picture. Obviously, they are a very established, large, very credible global CDMO, probably one of the largest in terms of the revenues, but it's just that many of their facilities are outside of India. So we probably don't hear so much about them, but all small molecules. So they were looking to enter large molecules. They were, again, given the potential that large molecule CDMOs have. So that was like, as you said, a sort of perfect match, and it came to us very early, and we were happy to get into it. So what that has enabled is, we still remain an independent company. At this time, they have 1/3 ownership in the company, obviously with time, with the intention to increase that. But there are two important aspects of this. One was the money, or three, right? One was the money, obviously, which we needed to scale, and that is what we have been doing. We started with one GMP facility, in fact, right opposite Bharat Biotech, where we made 2 suites to do early stage process development and GMP manufacturing for phase 1, phase 2, only up to 200 liter bioreactor scale. So that's sufficient for early stage vaccines and gene therapy product. But then if you want to go larger scale and especially venture into other areas like monoclonal antibodies, that's quite small. So with this investment, we have made an additional process development facility. We are currently setting up 2 more GMP suites, including 1,000-liter suite to support our clients for late stage development as well as early launch, as well as to support early stage maps, because the scales are very different. So that was the whole idea. In terms of what we see as the outlook in terms of vaccine, what we are seeing is a lot of interest. Again, we don't have our own pipeline, right? We are a services company, so it depends on what people come to us for. But what we have done is we have established capabilities and facilities on a single-use disposable platform and modular facilities. So we are agnostic to whether it's a suspension cell process, whether it's a adherent cell process, whether it's mammalian or microbial. We have the capabilities for both. So the interest that we are really seeing, again, post-COVID, is into viral vector-based vaccine as well as mRNA vaccines. We don't do synthetic mRNA, but we have the capabilities to do, plasmid DNA, IVT, and then bake mRNA-based vaccines. So that's really where we are seeing the interest from the global biotech industry for the services, other than monoclonal antibodies, with Piramal being in fold and their interest in ADCs.
Thank you. So I'm going to open up the floor for questions because we have all the senior members here. If there are any questions, please do ask us. Otherwise, I will do it.
Hi, good morning. Good afternoon. I have...
No, I'm going to ask him little later so that I thought there are people who might like to, yes, there's a last one there. Please go ahead.
Yeah, I was wondering, are you using CRISPR technology for shortening the time for the development of the vaccine? That's number one. And number two is how you will prevent the escape of the viruses, or what has happened in China, and what lessons you are learned applying it to safety of the public.
So I'll answer that from our perspective. So for us, CRISPR technology comes very early into the, research or discovery stage, while where we start is really once the company has identified a product or a lead candidate. Also, all of our work has been into recombinant vaccine and viral vector-based technologies, where these are pretty established, sort of quote-unquote safer systems to use. But obviously, the answer will be very different from Dr. Harshvardhan.
Yeah, I think Harshvardhan sir, you should take that question. How do you prevent a mishap happening? I mean, we are also frightened, let's put it this way.
No, still, I would put it this way, that probably we are the first company to have gone very deeply into containment facilities. We have the experience, we have the trained people, and they also realized for their personal benefit the importance of taking care of what they are handling. And for instance, when we started work on COVID, the people who were trained to work in a containment facility, they were given the opportunity to handle SARS virus, and politely their families were told to go home. And
that's the sacrifice part here.
Yeah, for 2 months they were not with their families. They stayed on the campus, didn't go out of the campus. These people who started working. So I think we have learned a lot of lessons from them. And today, you can't easily enter Bharat because we are controlled by the central security force systems. Anyone coming in, you need a lot of permissions for them to enter. Anyone coming, so it's very difficult to enter Bharat today. Previously, anyone can come and just give us a call. We'll welcome them. But today, it's not in our control.
So that is where I meet Krishna in the hotel itself, sir. It's a lot easier for me.
Yeah, there will be somebody following. Yeah. So, but we need to keep on learning. Yeah, certain things are getting very tighter and tighter. I think we need to welcome those measures, for instance, and definitely sacrifice our own personal.
See, just to answer your question, some of us who have worked in BSL-3 facilities and BSL-2 facilities, see, the entire endeavor is to ensure that neither you get to carry anything inadvertently outside. There are so many safety checks and mechanisms. Actually, by the time you enter and get out, even if you want to use a restroom facility or even to attend to nature's call, is so difficult. So people who have undergone that will tell you, you can't de-scrub yourself at all. It is so difficult to do it. So it is a nightmare that if somebody decides to take it out with full knowledge and put it out, those calamities are something that you can't prevent all the time in my view. But I think there are enough safety mechanisms inside a system and they won't simply go away like that. Any other questions from the audience to any of the people? Yeah, go ahead, please.
A very general question. Many people are skeptical about mRNA vaccines. So people believe that many governments, they did not disclose a lot of safety data or side effect data about vaccines. So what do you have to say on that?
Yeah, I have a viewpoint. This is very personal, in the sense that I have been working with various kinds of, including polio. I belong to the team, first team in the country who made polio vaccines Hybiz in 1968. And at the time, government of India did not know anything about vaccines. And what had happened at that time was that there were other groups within the government sector, for instance, they didn't like polio vaccine being made by an institute which is governed by an association. It was not a central government institute nor under state government, so they somehow managed to see that polio vaccine is not made by Pasteur Institute. It was a very sad story there. I lost my job at that time along with 79 other people. And for 2 years we didn't have a job. I had to go around the country, fight for registration, all that. So they made a very big mistake at that time, not unknowingly. I don't think they knew the ramifications of what could
Generally,
happen.
government makes mistakes unknowingly, sir. They never knowingly do any mistake.
So what had happened was, again, a lucky break for us was we were trapping monkeys in Nilgiris. They're called the radiator monkeys, not rhesus monkeys. And we found those monkeys did not contain simian virus 40, which can lead to generation of tumors. And Americans were doing on rhesus monkeys, and their early batches of polio vaccine contained SV40.
Oh, I see.
For millions of children got polio vaccine with SV40, whereas in India, we did not have SV40 polio. But even then, government, of course, they did not know what it is all about and shut it down. And today, including my Bharat Bete, we are now importing bulks from drug substance from Indonesia. BIPCOL did the same thing, government of India, DBT's project, and others also were importing, paying foreign exchange.
My God.
All these years we have been paying money in dollars to all those people who are supplying drug substance, whereas this Kunur Institute could have done the whole thing.
I know, I agree, sir.
Very sad story.
Any other questions from the audience? Yes, Lakshmiji? Yeah, please.
Focus into the vaccine industry. How the industry is gearing up in terms of the quality human manpower required for this industry?
Well, from a very industry perspective, I can say all of them are from the same industry. See, there is a need for quite a lot of skilled manpower to come. There's no doubt about it. You might have seen in the previous panel, the Merck person was also talking about training manpower there. So there is a very, very important step that every industry is taking in terms of developing manpower at its own stage. And I can tell you without any doubt, there is still extraordinary gaps in terms of certain type of skills that are required. And so that is one of the reasons. In a way, it is good for the job market in a different way. For example, I can work in Bharat Biotech, somebody gives me 2,000 rupees more, I can go to Panacea, then I can go from there to this and then to this. So if I see CVs generally, that is how I see. I mean, I don't blame anybody. It's not meant to be in the humorous form, but I notice that generally there will be a circle that these people will complete. In fact, in some of the interviews I did ask, you didn't apply to this company because the circle was not complete. So I have seen that also. But the point is, they will have no choice but to keep developing more and more people in this. And a lot of them are putting programs in to do this. I mean, it's something very much there. For example, you take my synthetic biology team. I had close to about 50 of them. And you have to remember that if Biocon decides to hire them, I can never match them in the salary, right? It's not possible at all. So there are 50 of them in different places. I don't regret that 50 people have gone. It's a question of you have trained 50 people towards a better cause, and they are doing things in a bigger company. So their scope gets better. So that's how this will also be there. This is my view, because this is how industry also grows. There's no other way you can look at shortcuts there. But we are not making a rapid transition where we are abandoning everything and going here. I mean, I don't think it's either or. It will continue in those directions. But there will be a gradual shift towards certain aspects.
The government is paying for the apprentice 50%,
Correct.
50%
Correct.
So with that, lot of manpower is being skilled.
Correct. Any other question from the audience? We have gone 2 minutes past the deadline, so go ahead.
So what do you think about HIV vaccine, or maybe what are the challenges hurdling the development of HIV vaccine?
I would refer it to the doyen here. I will never even hazard a guess. Please. Even though I have my views on that vaccine. Go ahead. Sir, you.
Again, not the right person to ask that question.
No, but we haven't touched that. Yeah, probably for good reasons. And I was wanting to also inform you that as I started to say, this is my personal opinion on mRNA vaccines, for instance. What I remember without mentioning the names is one American company announced soon after Biden became the president to say that they are going to make a vaccine. And what happened, and immediately government of US government gave them order for 100 million doses and also $1 billion in advance. Because of those two things happening, the share values of the company went up.
Correct.
They already made their money without making vaccine. I was just thinking we should also do that in our country.
Yeah, I know.
To make money for it. Yeah.
So, yeah, I agree. On the HIV vaccine, I think we will take some of those offline. There are some good and bad things that we believe could be part of how the vaccine development is. But to answer your question, that's been one thing, if you take from a layman's point of view, has been eluding for a number of years, if you see. Because we have sorted out much more dangerous things in life, but the HIV part has not been sorted, but it's going to be very soon sorted out. Yeah. It's not that it's going to take a long time on that. On the mRNA vaccine, I also have my views here on this. I basically come from a very old school of thought. So mRNA being a vaccine itself is sounding very odd to me. So that's very dangerous a word. So, but anyway, it's like it's the way things are shaping up. You can't sit in judgment of all these things. If they are safe, let's use it. If they are not safe, let's find out why they are not safe. So if there are going to be no more questions, I don't want to prolong lunch nor the other travel plans of people. So then I would like to conclude here. I mean, it was such a pleasure having the doyen of the pharma industry in vaccines sitting amidst us. He and his counterpart in Serum Institute, who just retired, are the two leading luminaries there. So I'm glad I had one of them here. I had the other gentleman before retirement in another panel. So thank you very much, all of you, for coming. And I wish you all the very best in terms of keeping us all safe and keeping us all alive. So a big thank you to all of you and to the BIRAC here. Thank you very much.
Our thanks to you as Pharmaceutical to bring us together and talk about vaccines. I love that. Thank you, sir. For sure.
By the entire vaccine fraternity and also the industries which are making strides in this domain. And I really appreciate the efforts of ABLE, Dr. Murali and the team for helping Pharmaceutical to have a wonderful panel discussions both on biopharma and vaccines and having a detailed deliberations also. And so thank you once again, sir, and I would request our chairman and vice chairman to kindly felicitate our distinguished panelists with the memento as a token of gratitude, beginning with Mr. Atin Tomar, the co-founder and CEO of Yapan Bio, the big name happening in the vaccine industry and the CDMO industry. A big round of applause for the great session that we have had today. Moving on, I request our chairman to present a memento to Dr. Harshavardhan, Secretary for the Indian Vaccine Manufacturers Association. As we heard, he spent almost 50 plus decades in the industry. And to Dr. Vinod Pantula from Dr. Reddy's Laboratories. And to present a memento to Mr. Bridge Baluni from the Zydus Life Sciences. And I also request our chairman to present the memento to Dr. P. Murali, President from ABLE, for having such a wonderful deliberated discussions on both the sessions. Thank you so much, sir, and I request you all for one group photograph, please.
check. Check. Hello, 1, 2, 3, 4, order. Check.
That's fine, that's no problem. Yeah, sure. We're
Пол-2, говорит. Это не пол-2, это административный, да?
Да. Я же написала.
Это лучше пиши. Да, я здесь пол-2. Нет, вот это. Ну, мы, в принципе, хорошо покушали, да? Да. Пирожное поели. А вы любите? Нет, в принципе, я не читала. Ну, сейчас мы поработаем. А может? Здравствуйте.
Нарендра.
Ага. Сейчас. А вы будете участвовать? Заходите сюда.
Что? Вы в 3, да, хотели запрашивать? Да. Вы в 3:30 не сможете остаться, да, на встречу? У нас в 3:30 встреча будет
Ну вот это, да?
Да.
Похоже, похоже. Ну, я бы сесть с вами поговорить.
Тогда вам придется остаться. На него кто-то вышел, ссылка, да, на него кто-то вышел. Чтобы правильно.
Везде папка арендовала.
Да, давайте послушаем.
Прекрасно не в этом. Рядом с крымская сторона. Причем по-моему.
Да. Не, я там.
Вот я поставила.
Тем более это индийское телевидение, пусть они все сядут и демонстрируются. Да?
Я не поняла.
Oh, I did this. Because we want Indian manufacturers to stick to it. So the delegation will sit outside. Yes. So Indian manufacturers will sit.
Мне интересно совпадение.
Oh, I'm sorry. Basically, I talked to
Ну да, что-то простое было. Ну, он
Делегации, как работает разведка.
Нет, хорошо, что он составом мысли.
Yeah, I was able there.
Нет, еще есть сипла.
Yes, I put that here. Yeah, whenever they sit down, I think
А он, кстати, слушал же, говорит, это наша культура. Healthcare. Он говорит, что это наше. Но он говорит, что его не собирается встречать, никто от нас встречает.
Сегодня еще раз послушать. Я только сегодня узнала,
Какая-то
что мы
сипла еще есть.
Да,
Да, сипла есть.
Я вчера все думала, Мили.
Мили это да. А мы же все Мили искали в этом. Вот то, или он бы сказал Мили. А не Мили это. А, вы же Мили говорите. А что сипла что?
This
адаму представителю туда один за ним будет, да? Як-то не улыбка. Где?
Take mine also, please.
Yani otursun alalım. Buna kadar oturalım. İki de göz doğru çok. Çok istiyorum benim o farklar.
This is yours.
Do I sit here?
Yeah.
Oh. Hello, hello, hello. That's it. Yes.
Just like.
Good afternoon, everyone. I take this pleasure of having you all on this occasion of a visit by His Excellency Mr. Edil Baislav, the Deputy Chairman for the Cabinet of Ministers of the Kyrgyzstan Republic. And the Honorable Chairman is so keen to have engagement interactions with the Indian pharmaceutical companies to enhance the bilateral collaboration in the pharma and healthcare especially. We are so honored to have this opportunity to have with us, sir, and we would like to introduce our Chairman, Mr. Veeramani, our Director General, Mr. Uday Bhaskar, and our Vice Chairman, Mr. Namit Joshi, and our former COA member, Mr. Nandaraji, and also Mr. Raghuveer Kini, Executive Director for Medical Devices Council. And we have presence from the major pharmaceutical companies here in this hall, and with that note, I would welcome you, sir, for your address to the Augusta Lab.
I think before that we can ask them to introduce.
Introduce, okay.
Please start.
My name is Mahesh Kale. I am from Hybiz Pharmaceuticals. We are manufacturing tuberculosis, HIV, malaria, and chronic segment of products.
Yeah. My name is Babuji. I represent Biozenta. We are one of the manufacturers of all the anti-HIV products. We have a wide range of products with API, formulations, finished formulations. And my director is also.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Adish Malhotra. I'm the Vice President at Beyond Pharmaceuticals. And this is my colleague, Mr. Karan. We are manufacturers of tablets, capsules, and dry powder injections. And we are into the segments of beta lactams, economic and generic products. Thank you.
Myself, I'm representing Hybiz. We are having contact with companies like Pharmaceutical, we are and US companies. We are manufacturing products that we are manufacturing.
Good afternoon, sir. We all are from IPHEX, which is one of the biggest companies from India who manufactures TB drugs, HIV drugs, anti-infectives, cardiovascular, and CH.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Karishma. I am representing this GVS Pharma. We are the world's largest manufacturer of suppositories and batteries. We are also into anti-malarials. Have a good day.
Good evening, His Excellency and good members. My name is Sarthak. I am representing Hybiz Medical Devices. We are into cardiovascular segment. We make the devices which are required for angioplasty, angiography, and heart treatments.
Okay. Well, floor is open to you. This meeting is organized a request from His Excellency Chairman, and we are happy to have him. And he added a value to the 9th edition of International Pharmaceutical Exhibition. Unfortunately, we missed him yesterday.
Yeah.
He was having a serious engagements in India with the national government. I'm very much delighted to welcome you, sir. The floor is open to you, and you can take it.
Thank you so much. I appreciate, of course, setting up this opportunity for us. This is very good opportunity. Of course, I'm here joined by my colleagues, also Deputy Healthcare Minister, Mr. Ulan Sidikov. And also we have recently, at the decision of our President, established a new state concern. It's called Kyrgyz Pharmacia. It's led by Ms. Gulmira Shakirova. And she is joined also by our specialists from the healthcare ministry, and we have some consular from the embassy. Mr. Azamatis, well, he will come later. And for us, this visit by our delegation was suggested by the Indian embassy in Bishkek, in Kyrgyzstan, and I also seized this opportunity. I said, I am going there myself. And I was so much looking forward to spend whole 3 days here. But as it happens, of course, I was also appointed the head of the bilateral commission, intergovernmental bilateral governmental commission, and its protocol requires that I drop by in Delhi and courtesy call on federal ministries, and so it's external affairs, and also with Mr. Goyal. He is the chairman on the Indian side. So our relations with India has been historically very on a very high level. Our country is, of course, 32 years old, but even in the Soviet times, we loved India. Our historical relations go back. We admire Indian history, and of course, most recent history. India is a moral example to the whole world. It's led the the great global many events. And so I was complimenting yesterday also to the representatives of Prime Minister Modi's cabinet, but also to you as leaders of the Indian industry. It is in the vital interest of Kyrgyzstan that India, we see the rise of it take up its rightful place as a leading civilization, as a leading country, and now the greatest, largest country, finally. But of course, when we come to pharmaceuticals, We know that India is the pharmacy of the world. The whole world who didn't know knows because of the recent pandemic, and that global pandemic, of course, was also a wake-up call for us, because the belief was that, okay, the market will take care of itself, that we have the suppliers, that as long as we can afford it, we can buy it. And then, of course, many nation states woke up, not only tiny developing countries like ours, but even some mid-sized countries, greater countries, they also said, oh, it turns out that it's a matter of national security. And therefore, this was already on the agenda. But in January 2021, we had elections, and we are now led by President Sadir Japarov. He is a young and very energetic president, and he won the mandate. But I can tell you that in the 2 years, his mandate only grown stronger, because in the less than these 2 years, he doubled our national revenue. He doubled our national revenue, no small feat. We are a country of 7 million. Well, we used to be 6, but last year we became 7 million. Also, we are growing, also very young population. But he doubled our revenue by running the campaign of clean hands, good governance, effective administration, didn't introduce any single new tax. And the call is now for our economic development, creating opportunities for our youth, doing all these kind of things, rebuilding our hospitals, putting our public services. We are a former Soviet republic, and so during Soviet Union, of course, we had one of the, what we used to be called the second world. As a socialist country, as a part of Soviet Union, we enjoyed a very good quality. My mother herself is a doctor, so I remember very well how it used to be run. But in the 90s and then in the 2000s, we came under this neoliberal policies, IMF, World Bank. They said, oh, you're too poor, you need to cut down, austerity, all this sequestration and others, and privatization, outsourcing, all kinds of things. And now we have to rebuild it, because we are a country that market economy, but we say healthcare is a human right. We cannot just leave it for the private companies, or see that children or elderly or terminally ill are left by themselves. And so we see that the state must play a role, and then we also see that the state can play it can, if we before we established this company Kyrgyz Pharmaceutical, of course we had dozens of larger importers. We had and of course hundreds of various retailer distribution networks, but it is only the economy of scale, and it's been only 2 months since this new state enterprise has been, but already saving money on bulk purchases, on cooperating with purchases. Also, we of course talking with our colleagues, with Mrs. Shakira's colleagues in Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan, and we understand, because some larger pharmaceutical companies, we are a very tiny market, and so it's very, they're not interested. They don't want to spend some, dedicate for a tiny contract. So perhaps we will be cooperating, on those, the most innovative products. We will be cooperating with our neighbors and purchasing them jointly. But nevertheless, this expo we know that's a meeting place of the whole industry, and we are here led by Ms. Shakirova, with our healthcare ministry officials. They've been talking to you. They've been talking to you, meeting you on some purchases, long-term, contacts. But one of our primary interests also is speaking with the Indian industry with the idea of inviting them to set up some production, manufacturing or packaging, or some taking advantage of Kyrgyzstan, not only to serve Kyrgyz market, but also to use us as a launching pad to reach the larger. We are part of this Eurasian Economic Union. We have the free economic zones. We have the special regimes. It's good distribution network and everything. Interested, to serve the markets of Central Asia, of Russia, Eastern Europe, maybe even also go forward and compete in some other markets. But we believe we can offer some good terms, individual terms. It will be both our government support. Our Kyrgyz Cabinet of Ministers is very much committed to this cause. But also, of course, we know that the Indian government also has the facilities. For example, yesterday with Mr. Goyal, we discussing the line of credit. They have opened us for Kyrgyzstan is $200 million. And also, but there's up to 1 billion USD offered to the whole of Central Asia. And even besides that, there is also facilities for the Indian exporters, Indian manufacturers. All the right conditions are there. We just need to talk. We just need to find the right counterparts, we really want to do mutually beneficial business of setting up some localization of our projects. But of course, we are very new. We are the first time in this expo. Well, maybe the 8th expo, you had probably some Kyrgyz people, but on a governmental level, therefore I was asked by my leadership to travel by myself and see it, and I also, but again, I came here to attend, and they have some IT thing, they have some other things. I was like, no, I want to, but then I took a walk. After we met in the morning, I really wanted to take a walk across the stalls, and then, of course, it's like you are in a candy store, you don't know where to start, who to talk, and others, so I really appreciate this opportunity that we can have here, and if you have any questions, any follow-up, we are ready also to invite you to Kyrgyzstan and continue our talks that we will initiate here today. I will be here also tomorrow morning, and hopefully we can interest you in partnering with Kyrgyz side. Thank you very much. I hope that I try to be as brief as possible, and so that maybe continue it on. We have, of course, the leading Indian companies, and of course, there's our leadership knows that the concept, the moral stance that India took, and Indian industry actually, I remember it very well when you had some, on generics, yes, in the 90s, in 2000s, you put the moral cause, that you cannot charge, and I was following that debate years ago when actually President Bill Clinton helped to establish the concept that yes, they finally agreed that you cannot let millions of people die just because some companies, they can, you know, and I was so happy when you found that when you stood and you won on behalf of the whole humankind, that, you know, saving lives comes first. Saving life come first, and as a compromise. So I like to use this opportunity to compliment the people of India, the government, and of course the Indian industry for doing this service to the humankind. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
We start with Petro, one of the leading companies in India. So anything would you like to know?
Yes, going by his address, what he said, we cannot leave the people left on their own. So that's a very good point which you said during your address. So, taking this forward, I wanted to brief you on our company. I represent a company called Hybiz. It's one of the largest pharmaceutical manufacturing companies.
It's Petro or what? H?
Like
Hetero. Hetero. Okay. Yes. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I've seen it. Yes. Hetero. Yes.
One of the leading pharmaceutical companies in India. It has products in all segments like HIV medications, and oncology medications, antivirals. So we are present in all the therapy segments, and be it injectable, be it oral, solids. So we do manufacture those medications, and we do have some business relationship with the companies. We already supply some products, and the last 3-4 years is going on. And thank you for your support. We keep getting feedback from Shakira on how do we improve ourselves. So those inputs we have taken from market and we will work on those. So there's a complete kind of a business support from India and also.
Очень много зарегистрировано. Конечно, просим о скидке еще, но я не думаю.
Right.
Yeah. You want me to? Yeah. First of all, my sincere apologies. I just went in search of the room in that hall. I just came from office. So thanks His Excellency for being here. And it's a really auspicious moment to all of us. And the collaboration between India and Kyrgyzstan in the area of medical and pharmaceuticals will continue. So I represent a company called MSN Labs. I just recently joined here as the head of emerging markets. So we are one of the fastest growing, not one of the fastest growing, I can say we are the fastest growing generic pharmaceutical company in the world. So we just completed 20 years. So we have close to 450 APIs, which is already like, we call them as a DMFs, where we have 450 DMFs approved in the US and 150 ANDAs again in US. And we are present across close to 75 countries in the emerging markets. So apart from US and Europe, we always believe that yes, emerging markets population they require these medications. So that way we have our own front-end field force in close to 50 countries. So and we operate through the subsidiaries. And of course, so we are open for any type of collaboration with Kyrgyzstan and Kyrgyzstan Emerge and all the Kyrgyzstan pharmaceutical companies. So our focus area is cardiodiabetology. In fact, we have the biggest basket in cardiovascular drugs. starting from basic antihypertensive, lipid lowering, anti-anginal, stroke, thrombolytics. We cover close to 55 molecules. What are 55 molecules? So we we try to say that we have 15 first to launch generics globally. First company after the innovator to launch these generics. So in India, in fact, we launched 7 first generic opportunity in cardiovascular, and our second biggest segment is oncology. So where we have 62 oncology products. So covering the basic first generation to the latest MIDs. So that is our second segment, and the third segment is neuropsychiatry. So where we cover from basic antidepressants to anti-epileptics, antipsychotics. We have close to 35 molecules in neuropsychiatry.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, when it comes to cardiovasculars, of course, you know, in Kyrgyzstan it's #1 cause of for men.
Right.
45, 50. I think we are #1 in the world. Да, номер 1 в мире. Well, номер 1 это причина. Да, ну еще одни из самых высоких в мире. Yes, we are one of the highest. Our deputy Kazakh corrects me, says it's not the highest in the world, but it's of course cardiovascular is #1 cause of death, and we know that we can do a lot of course prophylactics, but also access to diagnostics and some affordable treatment. And anyways, it's only yesterday I was reading in this international press that soon enough we are going to have these miracle pills. Yes, that hopefully you will also take it up, your biotechnology and others, maybe some. You know, this. I read that there will be a pill that will prevent aging. That will be the solution for everything. Well, maybe of course your sales will diminish.
So on a later side, then we'll have more wars.
Yes, of course, more wars.
Because human wants to live for more
of
time.
Course, of course,
so
right.
So you'll take more vitamins.
Yes.
Have good quality of life.
That's right. That's right. Yes.
So let me invite the next company. Arvindo.
Yeah, thank you. I am Devashish, and thank you, Your Excellency, for inviting us into this discussion. Aurobindo is again a Hyderabad-based company. We are 36 years young, and we are one of the Indian companies, I think the second highest sales amongst the Indian companies globally. So, as any other Indian company, we have a huge presence in the US and Europe. More than $2 billion business in the US and Europe, and which is backed up by a portfolio of ranging from anything to everything. So that's the core strength of this company. In Kyrgyzstan, we have currently 10 products registered, which we do some business, of course, plus and minus, both into anti-infectives and oncological space. We are in the process of getting more products into the country with the new EU norms that you are espousing, because we have a huge portfolio otherwise in that area as well. So, of course, we look forward to getting into it, and we would be delighted to directly associate with the endeavor that you are doing, and as a preferred, as a volume supplier, as you said in your address, in different therapeutic categories. So we would continue to engage. Please do let us know with whom we directly engage, and we can present ourselves and do the nitty-gritty of the business as we can. We are very keen on that, let me assure you that.
Thank you very much. This is the Mrs. Shakirova, the Kyrgyz Kyrgyz pharmacy.
Right.
The state enterprise. They only established about 2 months ago, but of course we did them for 2 years. But so this is both on purchases on behalf of the state, but also on talks on maybe setting up some localization of production and other things. We're definitely going to be establishing, one or two factories, state-owned factories, but yes, of course we need to talk with the industry also about, it's not only the ingredients, the mixing, etc., but of course the lines and everything. You can also direct us to the suppliers and yes. But yes, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Biocentral Life Sciences Private Limited, Mr. P. Narayan Sharma.
We are a manufacturer of oncology products, tablets, capsule, liquid injection, nephritis, injections, and PHARMA. We are also started our API plant for manufacturing of oncology products. So these are helping our backward integration. We have started our API plant also.
Backward integration.
And also we are having a line of general injectable with the care molecules. So we are already in communication with the pharmacy and madam and the team. Looking forward for this association.
From Matthias, Mr. Kali, Matthias Laboratories have a strong presence in the niche of scientific organization.
Good afternoon, sir. We are from Pharmaceuticals. We are 7th largest manufacturing company from India. We have 14 manufacturing units backed up by 2 API plants. We are supplying to more than 140 countries. We are pioneered in manufacturing of anti-tuberculosis products and also ARV and malaria products. So we have maximum number of WHO pre-qualification. That is 72 products are WHO pre-qualified, and we are supplying to all US funded and agencies like CHAI, PEPFAR, WHO. So all are using our products in Africa and in CIS and even in Latin America. So thank you for giving us time to meet you, and we are already in touch with Kids Pharmacy for registering the products, and we'll be supporting for all the documents and everything to get the registration as soon as possible.
Yes.
From Keon Laboratories, Mr. Rakesh.
Good evening once again, sir.
Yes.
Pleasure listening to you. And you have really excited us with the ambitious plans you have for Kyrgyzstan. And I'm from Theon Pharmaceuticals. We are a 16-year-old company, a young company, but really moving very fast. And with the vision that we provide good quality products at affordable prices. And that is what Kyrgyzstan and other countries also look forward to. We specialize in antibiotics, cardiovascular, and anti-diabetic. Our plant has 25 accreditations worldwide, and we are present in 40 countries. And recently, we have initiated our progress of business in the CIS, starting from Uzbekistan, and we have also set a small footprint in Kyrgyzstan. And we have very affordable prices. I would like to present you with my brochure, sir, with the product list inside. And also, we are setting up a complete dedicated injectable plant, which will become operational next year again. And we are seeking for a US FDA approval first. we have a very niche range of products. Basically antibiotics, cardiovascular, anti-diabetic. And these are some of the products which have just got off patent, and we are their upcoming products in our manufacturing facility. We are very prominent in the Indian tender government business also. We supply to the Ministry of Health, we supply to the Ministry of Railways, even to the armed defense forces. So we have a good presence in the Indian government tender business also. Thank you.
Now let me invite API leaders of the pharma industry, Mr. Nami Joshi, presenting the Syngene Pharmaceuticals.
Thank you very much, His Excellency, for sharing your thoughts about the way India and Pakistan can come close to each other on the healthcare front. And the best part of Pharmaceutical, our Indian pharmaceutical industry, is that we are, as an industry, we are also gradually backwardly integrated. Like, we intend to manufacture the key starting ingredient of major pharmaceutical products in India. So we are also planning to become as self-reliant as we can. And the main purpose is that there should not be anyone else who should be driving our business because we want to serve the humanity. So we don't want to rather get our position exploited by someone else in some other region. And that is how we look into consolidating our footprints. There are two aspects of when we talk to the various countries, there are two aspects of business we keenly business. One is how comfortable the country is in terms of accepting our pharmaceuticals. So we have a very exhaustive and very robust instrument in pharmaceutical. There is continuous work which keeps on going on that. And that facilitates the faster development of the products between the two countries. We already have our established networks and policies. And the other is how the regulatory body of Pakistan would like to see Indian manufacturers stepping in the region through the formulation import or through the API import when they do step in your own manufacturing. That would also be a big case if we start afresh from that ground. So on what level of pharmacopoeia you are looking at. Countries either about BP, USP, but in many countries we have already added a sixth one recently. We are also graduating in the same direction. We are trying to identify countries who are ready to accept our pharmacopoeia. So that would be one point-to-point ponder for your country. And on the API front, as I just shared that we are backwardly integrating to the key starting material. So we will be in a position, if not formulation, then from India we would be in a position to serve the APIs for you to make in your own country. And we have the complete bandwidth of supporting a country in terms of whether they want to import a formulation or they want to produce the formulation in their own country. So the complete bandwidth is available, and being a part of Pharmaceutical, I think this is the best opportunity and a place for your country to evaluate us in total, because you will not go empty-handed for sure.
Yes.
Any which ways in this value chain, India would contribute towards the growth and development.
Well, there is no way to avoid India. It's of course the pharmacy.
So this
we will come often. Yes.
And I would say in API also there are a lot of innovations which happen.
Yes.
We are the ones who have started using enzymes to manufacture API almost 2 decades back. So it's a lot of innovation which happens in API.
Yes.
And now we are seeing the benefit of those innovations by using API. Like if you talk about a cardiovascular drug, we manufacture the API using enzymes. There is no one on this planet who uses enzymes to make an API of cardiovascular drug. We are the ones. We are the pioneers in that. That technology, or rather that process of that API, can also come when you start having your own production. So there is a complete value chain which India can offer you.
because that technology from my parent company has also come to India to support our vision and purpose of making India one of the strongest companies all over the world.
No, it's we need to let's have this conversation also maybe.
Yes.
Yes, but. There are many ways, as they say, to cut a cat, or how they say, to kill a cat, or just drop a cat, but you know. So we are a bit, of course, overwhelmed by this task. We can do that way, we can do this way, we can invite manufacturers, we can start, of course, what's the technological, you know, this know-how. And and especially when it concerns this kind of medicine, you know, you don't want to make any mistakes. It's a bit, I can tell you honestly that we are very new and very young and you know, as it is.
I have a question, sir. Kyrgyz pharmacy.
Yes.
This for procurement for government or for private? You may be having pharmacies in Kyrgyzstan. You supply to pharmacies, you will be supplying, or it is you supply to the government?
It's government, but also some of that, of course, distributed by private pharmacies. Вы еще через аптеки будете продавать это.
Пока только государственные больницы, но
Да.
в будущем, да. In future.
In future. In the future, they, you know, they just started. They just concluded their first contract. Сколько вы контрактов уже подписали?
Ну, около 12.
Yes, only 12 contracts, but only 2 months.
Okay.
Only 2 months. So already 12 contracts. And recently, Mrs. Shakirova reported how much money that she has already saved for the budget by direct purchases, by direct, you know, factory purchases, without any middleman, without any this kind of thing. But of course, in the future, we also, you know, quite concerned because, however, you know, active she will not be able to cover in the first few months, the first few years, the whole market. So there is already this network. There's already, you know, dozens of private distributors. So we don't want to spoof them, you know, because if they cease to supply, you know, it's about people will suffer. So it's like step by step, she will go into, but hopefully for the final consumer, everybody will benefit. Also, those who buy over the counter, also they need to benefit from the lower prices.
So you will be floating the tender, or tender is already floated?
So, через тендер вы будете продавать?
Нет. Тендера
Yes,
нет.
yes.
Переводи. I'm sorry, my English not so good. Говори. Тендера не будет. Напрямую методом просто мониторинг. Три компании дают предложение. Мы мониторим, у кого самая более приемлемая цена. Но учитывая, что эти компании должны быть зарегистрированы в Кыргызстане, имеют сертификат DNB, преквалифицированный ВОЗ.
So the supply system in the Kyrgyz Republic has changed. Now the tender system is abolished. As we are the Kyrgyz pharmacy now the national distributor for the state health institutions for now, but as the deputy chairman mentioned, we might also cover the whole market, but it's in the future. For now, we're covering the needs of the health public institutions. And since there are no tenders anymore, we will be the ones who will supply to the public health institutions. But how it works, the whole procedure, basically we send the list of the needs to the manufacturers, and then we request an offer. We receive an offer from, for instance, 2-3 manufacturing companies, and we, of course, analyze the prices and the offer that is more convenient to our side. That contract we will probably follow and decide to sign the contract with. But with the condition that there is registration for the specific product. Also, it's mandatory to the company company to have the GMP certificate. And that's pretty much it. If you have any questions, please address them.
Such an information is sent to PHARMA.
Yes, absolutely.
And we will give it to all the members, calculate all members, so they can all participate.
У вас очень большие полномочия. Даже сейчас вот на первых порах нам президент государства дало очень большие полномочия. Мы можем заключать контракты долгосрочные, на 5 лет, на 3 года и так далее. И вот соответствующие качества.
Fortunately, we possess the power to sign long-term contracts, which is also beneficial to the manufacturers because we understand how production lines work and how you need to plan the production as well. And with the support of the government and the president himself, we are supported, and that's why we can
establish 3-year, 5-year contracts, supply contracts also. The tenders are not, of course, abolished totally, but the Kyrgyz pharmacy is granted these powers. Yes, so that direct purchases, because we all know that it will still be, at least 30-40% less price than it used to be before.
И если производители дадут свою продукцию под
консигнацию,
да, то тогда мы можем население тоже обеспечивать, потому что сейчас наших денег нет, если не расплачиваться.
I can tell this part is, of course, we are looking also for the long-term trust relations, because when we talk about this over-the-counter or this sort of retail pharmacy, for them we would much prefer, of course, on consignment. On consignment, so that we can have the rolling supply contracts, because at the moment, of course, we're starting with some volume, but it's mostly directed for purchases for state hospitals. But if some of our Indian partners would establish that kind of contracts and start that kind of things, of course, we are ready already now. Вы уже готовы сейчас начать, правильно? Да. Absolutely.
Since with the permission, may I also give more companies to
Yes.
represent?
Yes, of course.
So, from Big Pharma, Mrs. Shirish Keshwar.
I'm representing Group Pharma. We are mainly manufacturing chemical cleaners. We are having 5 accreditations as of now, and they're looking to work in this pharmacy.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I do know that everyone is very busy. Everyone is very busy. I really appreciate this opportunity. I think I will also want to take a stroll around the booth, but maybe we can have before then, like with this industry leaders.
Chairman, before we conclude, just I would like to know the registration procedures of your FDA. That is, unless otherwise, that is not familiar with our exporters. They may be aware of that, but we'd like to take you to the more
регистрационные процедуры в Кыргызстане.
У нас сейчас в стране по регистрации лекарственных средств.
То есть вы тоже Кыргызформация, а еще Делуола Барбарин как-то? Не смогла приехать.
Сейчас проводится в данный момент по национальной процедуре, хотя со следующего года эта процедура будет по правилам Евразийской экономического союза.
Мы его хотим отложить. Связать сайт теперь, что регистрация. Yes.
Добрый день, уважаемые коллеги. У нас этими вопросами занимается департамент лекарственных средств, специальная организация Министерства здравоохранения. Она проводит процедуру регистрации всех препаратов.
was postponed for 2 years. So for now, for the manufacturers, it's a good opportunity to register their medicines in easy way, let's say, through our national system of registrations. For now, since the department is still operating.
Это все делается для того, чтобы избежать в последующем дефектуры препаратов у нас в стране. В течение 2 лет мы хотим максимально насытить рынок препаратами без облегченной версии регистрации.
We took this decision in order to avoid the deficiency of the supply of medicines in our country. So for the manufacturers to have an easy way to register and actually supply your products to our country.
И если сказать несколько слов по трансформации, основные 3 цели, которые заложены в ее деятельности, это первое, на сегодняшний день первым этапом было заполнить потребности наших организаций здравоохранения, целой системы здравоохранения. Вторым этапом это, Вера Абдинова сказала, это открытие социальных аптек, где будет продаваться эта продукция полностью. И третий, немаловажный такой момент, это налаживание производства специфического продукта.
So right now, the Kyrgyz pharmacy has 3 main goals. The first is, of course, to cover all the needs of the state public health institutions. The second is to establish the social pharmacies with lower prices of medicines. And the third one is to establish our own manufacturing.
Для понятия ситуации я объясню, что Кыргызстан около 95% лекарств и медизделий завозится из-за рубежа. То есть у нас в стране нет практически производства. И это одна из хороших возможностей на сегодняшний день у нас наладить производство, в том числе рынок свободный, да. Правительство полностью поддерживает финансирование, с каждым годом прогрессивно будет увеличиваться, можно сказать, поэтому все такие удобные, такие оптимальные возможности у нас предоставляются.
So right now, the government since the import, the export of the medicines and medical supplies is 95% in our country. So that's why the manufacturing market is free, and the government fully supports the investors who would like to open their own manufacturing companies in our country. And all the possibilities, all the opportunities, and the conditions are very optimal and beneficial for both our sides.
Для обеспечения Кыргызстана всей линейкой препаратов, всем ассортиментом, в перспективе еще очень много будет подписываться контрактов.
And in the nearest future, there is a perspective of signing more contracts with the foreign manufacturers, through specifically Kyrgyz pharmacy.
Thank you. Thank you, His Excellency, and we would like to have a dialogue in future also. This is a procurement agency, and we are more interested in the registration processing. And what I suggest that we have a who and who of Indian pharmaceutical industries are here. Petro, MSN, Aurobindo, Bliss, and they have a very big footprint throughout the world, and we would like to continue to have a dialogue with agencies. So what I feel, if we in the coming few days, coming for 15 days, every 1 month, if we have one kind of a video conferencing with interested companies, with the regulatory agency, as well as with this procurement agency. So that is going to give a proper way and entry. So that is the better way of understanding each other. Yes. And few more companies may also join in this
Yes, it's totally possible. It's as I said, we in the national interest of our healthcare system, of our patients, of our people, the state will not leave these matters to the free market anymore. So we will have the healthcare ministry, the Kyrgyz Kyrgyz pharmacy, our state enterprise, but also some of our private actors. We will be directing them, and it's good that we will be establishing direct contacts with the with the Indian industry, and of course we will be raising it also on our government to government bilateral talks, because we talk about that 20% of Kyrgyz pharmaceutical markets is occupied by Indian, made in India, but actually it's not registered in our bilateral trade turnover, because it's somewhere it comes, and then they publish very minuscule numbers for our turnover. But anyways, we shouldn't waste time, but at the same time we should be also on very serious footing. This is a very new enterprise. They have not yet established themselves fully. The capacity is still, they will be overwhelmed in a bit. Imagine dealing with hundreds of things, but Mrs. Shakirova is going to be, of course, very much focused. I think we will be both video conference, we will be reaching out, and it's so good that we have the support of the industrial organization, so that through you we can yes, thank you so much. Thank you so much. And thank you.
Let us take the pleasure of token of gratitude.
Yes, I saw. Yes. It's the best medicine in the world. Yes, best medicine. Thank you so much. Oh, thank you so much.